So this is part 3 of a 3-part series covering Alaska Airlines 1282. And in this section, we're going to cover Boeing and the difficulties they're having. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to the video. Now let's go to Boeing. Boeing says it can't find documents. Can't find the documents on the door plug that blew off midair. Amid a federal investigation into what caused a door plug to blow off a Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet in January, a Boeing top official said the company cannot find documents about the door plug, and it's likely that such records never existed. So we do maintenance on an aircraft when we're building it. After it's buttoned up, we take it apart, we put it back together, and records of that never existed. Likely? I don't want to butcher his name. He's the executive vice president of government operations at Boeing, said employees we looked everywhere. We looked extensively. We looked everywhere. And we failed to turn up any paperwork about the opening and closing of the door plug. According to Ojokli, Boeing's working hypothesis is that the documents required by our processes were not created when the door plug was open. So the documents required were not created when the door plug was opened. The letter was in response to the Senate Commerce Committee's hearing on Wednesday, where National Transportation Safety Board Chairman Jennifer Hamdi, she was the woman that was given the briefing at the beginning of this presentation, accused Boeing of withholding key information about the door plug. Ojokli denied the allegations, said the company has been committed to cooperating fully and transparently, except for providing required documents, which were apparently not created when the door plug was opened. Other than that, we're going to be fully transparent. In a preliminary report released last month, the NTSB said the door plug in question was missing 4 key bolts, one that helps keep the door plug in place. Investigators believe the bolts were not reinstalled when the plane received some repair work at Boeing's facility in Washington State last year. On Wednesday, Hamdi said the NTSB still does not know who was responsible for failing to reattach the door plug properly. Ojokli responded in his letter that Boeing has since sent over additional names of employees as requested. Well, we don't know, you don't know who it is, but we got some people you can talk to. Boeing has been under intense scrutiny ever since January 5th, when a door plug tore off at 16,000 feet and left a massive hole. Yep, massive hole. Boeing did not immediately respond to NPR's request for comment. So what is Boeing doing now? Boeing wants to buy back the company that builds the body of its troubled MAX planes. Boeing said it's in talks to buy Spirit AeroSystems. This is the place that they sold in 2005 and was involved in the door plug blowout. So negotiations were first reported earlier on Friday by the Wall Street Journal and Seattle Times. Spirit shares soared 15% in tradings Friday on the reports. So troubled Spirit getting bought out, and their stock price soars. But shares had been down 10% from the time of the Alaska Air incident in early January through Thursday, and down 70% since a March 19th fatal crash, which led to the 20-month grounding of the jet. Boeing sold Spirit in 2005, receiving $900 million in cash. Wichita, Kansas-based Spirit AeroSystems makes major parts for Boeing. The parts are then shipped to Boeing's factory via rail. We believe that the reintegration of the Boeing and Spirit AeroSystems manufacturing shops would further strengthen aviation safety, improve quality, and serve interests of our customers, employees, and shareholders. Well, not if you're not going to create the required documents when you do maintenance. Doesn't matter where you do it at. You can own them all. If you don't make the documents that you can follow along, then you're going to continue to have a problem. Boeing said in a statement late Friday, although there can be no assurance that we'll be able to reach an agreement, we are committed to finding ways to improve the safety and quality of the airplanes on which millions of people depend each and every day. Spirit has also had its own series of quality control issues. The problems have become serious enough that Boeing had agreed to give more money to try to improve Spirit's quality reliability issues. They're hurting Boeing's own output. The payments came to an extra $60 million in revenue last year and $395 million in 24 and 25. 24 and 25. It's still 24 right now, so unless we're talking about some sort of creative business year, we haven't reached 25 yet. Those payments are 24 and 25. Those payments are an indication of Boeing's motivation for a deal for Spirit. It can't return to profitability itself unless problems at Spirit are also fixed. So about $3.9 billion of Spirit's AeroSystems revenue last year came from Boeing, making up about 64% of its overall revenue. It talks about Airbus, which they do some Airbus work also. So, initial report from the NTSB on January, the incident with the door plug on the Alaska Airlines flight found that the jet had left Boeing's factory in October with 4 bolts missing that were needed to keep it in place. But the reason that the door plug and the missing bolts were removed by Boeing was that the fuselage arrived at Boeing's factory with problems with 5 rivets that had been done by Spirit AeroSystems. So were removed by Boeing. Well, we've seen a couple other reportings that say Boeing didn't remove them. Spirit did. So they got to get this lined up and see who actually did the work. But of course, there's no paperwork, so how do we know actually who did it? Unless somebody says, oh, I'm the guy that did that. So even if Boeing was ultimately responsible for the problem, quality issues at Spirit may have also played a part. So the NTSB has yet to blame anyone for the incident. What they do know, it was an out-of-sequence work which caused the problem. In 2023, it used a non-standard manufacturing process when joining parts of the fuselage, causing a halt in deliveries of 737 MAX jets. And just a month ago, a Spirit employee notified Boeing that 2 holes may not have been drilled exactly to Boeing's requirements, which required Boeing to rework about 50 planes that had not been delivered. So Boeing has problems, Spirit has problems. Why not combine them? This is a story about Boeing selling the facility. So this is an editorial, and it's opinion and commentary about let's see who this is. This is Blanc0lirio from the Wichita Eagle. As Boeing looks to buy back Spirit AeroSystems Wichita plant, bitter memories resurface. Now this is an opinion piece. This is an independent work by this reporter. So he's going to relate a story from what he actually witnessed back in 2005 when Boeing sold this to what ultimately becomes Spirit AeroSystems. So it was Saturday, March 21st, 2005 to be exact. So it was a day I spent sitting on porches in South Wichita with Boeing employees as DHL Express delivered packages carrying news of whether they should report to work the Monday after Boeing divested itself of its Wichita plant. He writes, I further remember watching the bright yellow DHL truck as it moved down the street, stopping at every few houses to deliver those packages. And I remember the tears of the displaced workers, who were generally older and better paid after spending decades sweating and bleeding for Boeing, and thinking the company had their back. Workers like Johnny D. Jones, a 32-year Boeing employee who wept when he got his letter from Midwestern Aircraft Systems, the placeholder name for what had been Boeing's Wichita division, later renamed Spirit AeroSystems. The letter reads, we regret to inform you that you will not receive an employment offer from Midwestern Aircraft Systems at this time. Thank you for your interest in the company and for participating in the employment process. Now, Jones was 60 and had been a dedicated soldier of the Cold War. He started with Boeing in 1972, refitting and modernizing B-52 bombers, a key element of the U.S. nuclear deterrent force that kept the Soviet Union in check. He suspected he was on the chopping block after he was abruptly transferred from a military division, which Boeing didn't sell, to a low-level job in the civilian aircraft plant that was being sold to Onyx Corp, a Canadian investment firm that acted as the middleman to do Boeing's dirty work. Now, the underlying reason for the sale was Boeing wanted to cut costs by abrogating its labor contracts and its Wichita workforce. The sale gave Onyx a free hand to make them all reapply for their jobs, shedding the higher-paid line workers and renegotiating contracts with the survivors. It wasn't long until the successor company started pestering the legislature for job training money to prepare workers for its factory floor. And as I watched that unfold in Topeka, I remember thinking to myself, you had a trained workforce. What did you do with it? Now, Onyx made $3.2 billion with its venture between 2005 and 2014 until it sold off its last remaining stake in Spirit. Now, 19 years later, the sins of the past are on approach at Boeing. And it's a truism in any industry that rampant cost cutting sooner or later leads to degradation of product quality. If you're making picnic coolers or car stereos, two other things that Wichita used to be famous for, the consequences aren't all that severe. But when you make airplanes, every single working part has to be right every single time, or people can die. So Spirit's signature product is fuselage for the 737 MAX. At the writing of this, the 171 MAXs were grounded. It was terrifying and traumatizing for the passengers, but thankfully the seatbelt light was on and none of them were killed. Now, this incident followed other quality issues coming out of Spirit plant, including misdrilled holes in the pressure bulkheads that were discovered last year and the subject of an ongoing class action lawsuit. That followed revelations of problems with tail fittings for the plane. For Boeing, the Alaska Airlines blowout was the latest in a series of quality control fails, the most serious being the mass grounding of 737 MAX planes from 2019 to November 2020 after botched software in overseas airliners caused two crashes that killed 346 people. Boeing, you've got a long way to go before you get your mojo back. Buying back the Wichita plant would be a start, but it's only a start. What you're really going to need going forward is skilled and conscientious line workers who care about quality, do things right, and are confident enough to speak when something goes wrong. Guys like Johnny D. Jones. But it won't be him. He died in 2009, 4 years after you sent the DHL truck to his house. A poignant reminder when you try to hire less experienced and a cheaper workforce. So, last couple of things. Boeing's CEO is going to step down. Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun to step down and shake up amid safety crisis. So Dave Calhoun will step down by year end in a broad management shakeup brought on by the airplane maker's sprawling safety crisis exacerbated by a January mid-air panel blowout. Two other people are stepping down, Larry Kellner and Stan Deal, as they try to get control of the myriad issues that have shaken the confidence in the plane makers. So Calhoun was 66 was brought in as CEO following a pair of crashes in 2018 and 19 that killed nearly 350 people. Immediately after the January 5th blowout, airline executives expressed support for Calhoun, but those good feelings ebbed after additional production delays and as regulators detailed quality problems at its key manufacturing hub outside Seattle. Some investors said the shakeup would not be enough to address these persistent issues. Yeah, if you have a cultural problem, it starts at the top, but it moves down. And it has to stop at the top, and it has to really take a foothold so the people are comfortable with what they can do. Boeing shares have lost roughly a quarter of their value since the incident. They closed up 1.4% Monday off highs hit earlier in the day. They need more than just a shakeup at the CEO and chairman of the board level. They're just paralyzed from making decisions, said Robert Pavlik, senior portfolio manager at Dakota Wealth. It's going to take a little bit more time for Boeing to get straightened out. So Michael O'Leary, head of the Airlines Ryanair, a top Boeing customer, said Monday the airline welcomed the much-needed management changes at Boeing, calling the shakeup good for the plane maker's customers. Calhoun said he made the decision to step down. It was me giving them notice that at the end of the year I plan to retire. He said he wanted to stay to the end of the year to address quality issues. Well, if you've been there, how long did you say you've been there? 4 or 5 years? That was your time to address quality issues. Not now that we've had another incident and you need to go. COO Stephen Pope has been appointed to lead Boeing commercial airplanes effective Monday. Stephen Mollenkopf, former CEO of tech company Qualcomm, has been appointed new chair of the board and is leading the search for the next CEO. So last week, a group of U.S. airline CEOs sought meetings with Boeing directors without Calhoun to express frustration over the Alaska Airlines incident management. They called the shakeup positive, but it depends on Calhoun's successor and changing the company's culture from the top. Workers' representatives echoed that sentiment. And it doesn't help that they're fixing to go into union negotiations. And the unions are actually seeking a seat on the board so that they can present their issues as well. Some suggested that Spirit AeroSystems CEO Patrick Shanahan, a former Boeing executive and U.S. government official, now tasked with a complex tie-up deal with the U.S. plane maker, was a possible successor to Calhoun. Now, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but here you have a guy who worked at Boeing as a senior executive before. He's gone to Spirit AeroSystems now. There were problems with Boeing before and now. Spirit has problems now. These are all quality and safety issues at both companies. You're getting rid of the CEO at Boeing, and you want to take the CEO from Spirit and put him in charge of Boeing. What kind of sense does that make? Makes no sense whatsoever. This is the last guy that I would want running the company. He hasn't fixed. He wasn't able to fix it. If he didn't speak up when he was at Boeing, and then he went to Spirit, and they still have problems, then he's not letting people speak up there. So this is not your guy. Hell, I'd be better at it than him. So Shanahan's sole priority remains building a culture of safety. Yeah, how's that working out for you? At Spirit, spokesperson Joe Bottino said Monday. Yeah, I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it's a good fit to me. But, let me know what you think. Do you want a guy that has problems with safety at his company to become the CEO with problems of safety at their company? So replacing Boeing CEO Calhoun won't be easy. Here are some ideas. So this is Yeah, this is AI. After recent problems at Boeing put CEO Dave Calhoun in the hot seat. The company announced that he's stepping down at the end of the year. It isn't clear who will replace Calhoun. The company announced that he told them he was stepping down. They didn't ask him to step down. The Federal Aviation Administration capped 737 MAX production at 38 per month after the January 5th in-flight emergency door plug blowout. And this slowdown is relating to the quality issues. So regime change is now essential. Aerodynamic Advisory Managing Director Richard Abulafa tells Barron's. Customers and the FAA need their pound of flesh, says benchmark analyst Josh Sullivan, adding he wasn't expecting to see anything announced as soon as it happened. Seems to me like it's a little bit too late. Sullivan's caveat reflects how Wall Street talks about management succession. If you like to call for someone's job explicitly, no, not at the top. They don't like to call for somebody's job at the top, but they're completely fine with eliminating the jobs at the bottom and bringing in a untrained, uninformed, low-paying workforce when you already had a workforce that was trained and knowledgeable about what they were doing. There are reasons for that. For starters, continuing business relationships are at stake. Do you want the plane or not? What do you care who's at the top? You think you're going to get a better deal from somebody at the top? You don't want them to cut corners, but you want to keep the guy at the top that's cutting corners. Allegedly. There is no easy answer about who is to blame for Boeing's current woes. Most analysts reference the late 1990s Boeing McDonnell Douglas merger when explaining how the company ended up in its current mess. So now you want to talk about a two-decade problem that you had 2 decades to fix or get into and get out of, but you didn't. Most analysts also credit Calhoun for returning the 730 MAX to service in November 2020 after its worldwide grounding for almost 2 years after 2 deadly crashes. Yet without Calhoun, they never would have got those back in the air. Boeing continues to bleed single-aisle jet market share to Airbus and has no brand new model that could stem those losses on the horizon. Well, if you keep having problems with your planes, you're not going to stem the losses. They're going to go somewhere else. And the only way the planes may come out a little bit slower, but at least they'll be coming out. They just need to be safe. So I don't care about the stock prices. I mean, that's what they care about. Of course, obviously, I only care about safety. Investors aren't a very forgiving group, making a change a possibility. 3 names come up most often when discussing Calhoun's successors: Larry Culp, Bill Brown, and here we go again, Patrick Shanahan. His name keeps coming up, and they don't care about quality concerns or safety concerns because he's got problems at his company he's at now. So Culp runs General Electric, a dominant supplier of jet engines and a key Boeing supplier. Culp parachuted into another crisis in 2018 when he took over GE. I don't know where he came from. I don't know if there were problems where he came from, but apparently he's fixing GE. Wall Street at that time questioned the choice, wondering if his prior success at Danaher would translate into a different industry. It did, as evidenced by the number of times analysts say Culp when asked who could help Boeing. He is, however, busy breaking up GE into GE Aerospace and GE Vernova. So they're moving from their power to their aviation industry, separating those. He will remain CEO of GE Aerospace. Brown, the former CEO of defense giant L3Harris Technologies, is tied up too. He was just named CEO of 3M, replacing current CEO Mike Roman in May. Of those 3, that leaves Shanahan, the current CEO of Boeing, and the supplier Spirit AeroSystems. Spirit also has its quality. Well, at least we're acknowledging that in this issue, in this article. Spirit also has its quality issues, but Shanahan took over in September. What's more, Spirit Aero might end up part of Boeing again. The two companies have acknowledged merger talks. Spirit Aero was part of Boeing until it was sold to the Canadian private equity firm Onyx in 2005. Shanahan would be a brilliant choice and Culp excellent too, says Abulafi. Shanahan has a master's degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA from MIT. Impressive. Still, he isn't a universal choice. Shanahan is a Boeing insider, was what I said. You worked there and there were problems. And apparently there were problems for 2 decades. So, working some 3 decades at the company before leaving. What they really need is a true outsider with a pedigree that is not afraid to sort this mess out, even though it will take years. Bill Brown would have been an ideal, but he went to 3M. Yeah, somebody that's not part of it. That's what you need. You need somebody that's not part of the system. The investigation is ongoing, so whenever there are any new updates, I'll try to make a video on that and post them on here so everybody can be aware of what's going on. If you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and thanks for watching. Peace out.